The Cleveland Browns returned to practice ahead of their Week 1 home opener against the Cincinnati Bengals. One issue, though. Denzel Ward is still in the concussion protocol. We'll break down that. We'll break down what could possibly happen if he's unable to go on Sunday against the Bengals on your latest Locked On Browns, which starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, officially now 7th season with Week 1 underway here, covering the Browns for you here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. That number keeps growing up. I'm ever so thankful. And, of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter the promo code LockedOnNFL for a water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Your Browns news of the day, and obviously the big one, and we're going to elaborate here on this episode on that. Denzel Ward still in the concussion protocol, so obviously not ideal when you're going to face this vaunted Bengals offense on Sunday. PJ Walker, his first appearance at practice today, signed to the practice squad. He'll be wearing jersey number 10. Shelby Harris went to his traditional and most worn jersey in the NFL, number 93. Dustin Hopkins was not there today, expected to be there to work out tomorrow, even though the Browns technically are off on Tuesday. No reason was given, but you got to keep in mind, Dustin Hopkins is a family man, obviously coming from the West Coast, coming to Ohio. Maybe just some, family business that he had to settle. But the word on Hopkins is he'll be good to go and good to be work out Tuesday and then join the team for the rest of the week of practices. But Denzel Ward, and it's always difficult with the concussion protocol because you're never given a timetable. You go through the tests. Obviously, you go through where the player is at. Rodney McLeod and some other players spoke after practice. They sounded upbeat that they thought Ward would be available to go on Sunday. I don't know what we can take from that. Obviously, nobody can give any clarity on this situation with Denzel Ward. When he's back and he's out of the concussion protocol is when he's back. There is no timetable. There is no he's getting better. There's no way to determine any of these things. He gets cleared from the protocol. He's back. Obviously, for the Browns, if you want him to play on Sunday, you would like to hear that he's back at practice on Wednesday. The injury was on Saturday the 26th, so he's probably at this point about 9 to 10 days through the concussion. As we all know, Denzel's been down this road before, sadly. Some players just seem, it's something that happens to some players more than others. I myself, back in my days, I was one of those guys. I suffered concussions. It's a brutal injury. It's a difficult thing, and it's even worse that you're just basically sitting around and there's nothing you can do until basically somebody says, all right, I think he's good to go. There's been a lot of talk about this, though, as far as Ward, number one, and should he hang him up? And nobody knows what's going on in somebody's mind, obviously. But there are some facts here. Denzel Ward has $51 million guaranteed to him on his current contract. So the incentives to keep going obviously would be there. Of course, Denzel made really good money, being the 4th overall pick, riding out 5 years of a rookie deal. Denzel Ward is, don't know one way or the other, but you assume Denzel Ward is obviously financially, pretty set. But, another $50 million in guaranteed money, that's a really, really tough thing to walk away from. Plus, there's always the love of the game and those types of things. So anybody thinking that maybe he's going to hang him up, I think I just gave you 50 million reasons why he's probably not going to hang him up anytime soon. There's also a lot of people wondering why he was playing in the Browns' final season preseason game against Kansas City Chiefs. Denzel Ward, 2022 was not his best year. And we've seen Denzel be an elite cornerback in this league. And it's just the player itch. And, Denzel obviously, wants to come back, get his name back to where it was, because the NFL is such a fickle business. As quickly as they fall in love with you is as quickly as they can fall out of love with you. And, Denzel obviously wanted to make sure that he was in the best possible tuning aspect of his own game, and was ready to go for what is this very, very difficult beginning stretch. Of course, playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. I know a lot of people are saying, almost Cincinnati didn't play their starters. That's fine. It's everybody's prerogative. Of course, it's the way it goes. But for, Denzel to, play in that game, to participate in that game, ultimately ending up getting injured, difficult blow, obviously, for this team, for this defense, which looks to be, a defensive unit that is certainly going to rebound from how poor they were in 22 overall. A lot of new personnel here, of course. Brand new defensive coordinator, top notch, top shelf defensive coordinator, and I'm sure for Denzel Ward, it's a new itch to scratch. You're excited. You want to get out there. You want to, compete with your guys. And you saw what that Browns defense looked like in that first half of that game. This looked like a unit without Myles Garrett that is ready to go. Granted, the Chiefs were not playing their starters, but this is, a unit that looks like it is going to be a special group here in 2023. We're going to get to segment 2 here in a second, but, obviously the question then would be is, what is this team going to do? What is this defense going to do if, in fact, Denzel is unable to go, Sunday at home against Cincinnati? We'll get to that in segment 2 here, but he's a vital part of this defense. He is one of the top players on this defense when he is at his best. And I know a lot of people, and what everybody's saying, oh, was dinged, he never finishes the season, he's always injured. It's the National Football League. It's a physical sport. These collisions are no joke. Yes, Denzel's missed time with concussions. He's had some ankle, some normal football injuries, hamstring, ankle, this, that, and the other thing. But just because a player misses time does not mean that all of a sudden the player is not good or is not valuable. That is preposterous. It's a joke to even say it that way. He is in a relationship now with the Cleveland Browns for probably a long, long time. Browns truly can't move on from him because there's money you got to eat. And the other thing is the fact that who's going to come running if you all want to run him out of town for the injuries, this, that, and the other thing. Who's coming running to take him and take on that money and take on the injury risk and take on the missed time? The Browns have built that cornerback room with the understanding of depth and with the other understanding of people do get hurt in the NFL. So having capable backups, capable replacements, capable depth is very, very important to a unit. We're going to wait and see on this approach here where Denzel Ward is at come Wednesday. That'll be important. If Denzel's back on the field Wednesday, you think he'll be ready to go. And again, I will tell you guys, as always, the Browns are super cautious with their players. Just because a guy returns to practice doesn't necessarily mean he is going to play in that week's game. We'll switch it up here. We're going to go to what we'll call Plan B if Denzel Ward is unable to go here in the opener against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody for being along for the ride with me. Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dogs fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat, wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day. Bird Dogs are functional for any occasion: golf, dates, evenings, you name it. Bird Dogs will make you look good. The problem is I get my Bird Dogs. They go in the laundry. And the problem is if you have teenagers, you know whether or not it's a quality product if your teenagers are stealing your gear. My hoodies, they get stolen all the time. But my Bird Dogs, they get stolen. So obviously, you know the product is solid. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnXXX or enter the promo code LockedOnXXX at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnXXX for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. birddogs.com, Locked On NFL. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. As we mentioned here in the beginning, Dustin Hopkins out of practice today. Don't know the reasoning, but my belief probably relocating from Los Angeles to Cleveland in less than a week. It probably takes a little time. And the Browns were also the last couple of days. Maybe Dustin Hopkins needed a little more time to get his affairs in order. Denzel Ward still out of practice within the concussion protocol. His availability for Wednesday, we don't know. We will get our first injury report for week 1 on Wednesday. We'll see where Denzel's at. If he returns to practice, you're talking about a doubtful or a questionable listing. If he doesn't return, still a doubtful, questionable, but it probably doesn't look good whether or not Denzel Ward would be available to go against Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday in Cleveland. So the plan automatically goes to then is, well, what is the plan? Denzel Ward has had great success against the Cincinnati Bengals franchise, great success against Joe Burrow. He's held his own against Jamar Chase at times. Jamar Chase, you can have a good game against Jamar Chase and he's still going to get his numbers. That's just how much of a ridiculous player Jamar Chase is at the wide receiver position. Martin Emerson would be a guy who's going to be starting on the outside. If you look depth chart wise, it seems like Greg Newsome is a guy that, is listed as Brown's first team nickel cornerback. But the realization of it is that Greg Newsome is probably also your second or third best outside cornerback. So if Denzel Ward isn't able to go, how do you manufacture this? Does Greg Newsome play outside all day long? Does Greg Newsome just play outside in base defense when you were running your 4-3 with obviously your 4 defensive linemen, your 3 linebackers, your 2 corners, and your 2 safeties? When you start going to your sub packages, your nickel and your dime defense, is that where maybe Greg Newsome is going to go inside and play nickel? If he does, that brings in the question of who is going to play on the outside. You have, of course, AJ Green, most likely if Denzel Ward was not able to go, would be elevated from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. Certainly a ton of experience playing against the Cincinnati Bengals team. Cameron Mitchell, for the time being, the question would be, would he go to nickel? Would you keep Greg Newsome on the outside? Putting a rookie in with a lot of playing time, with a Tyler Boyd assignment in his first NFL game, it's tough. But, you drafted this guy with expectations he would be able to contribute. If you do keep Greg Newsome on the inside, there also is Kahel Hailassie. Of course, granted, he's not been here very long. How much playbook knowledge he has, we're not sure. For anybody who's going to ask about Mike Ford, it seems like Mike Ford is just purely a special teams player for the Browns roster this year. Certainly could see some reps here. So there's going to be that question. I mean, could this work in Jim Schwartz's favor, where he can kind of just look at this and say, I can do a lot of different things here, and I can switch up the looks, trying to just confuse them, make it, not as easy. And now you start to go to individual assignments. I mean, it seems Martin Emerson, T. Higgins is, 2 guys that should just go at it. I don't know. There's not a lot of guys who have the size at the Browns cornerback position to match up with, of course, a T. Higgins. Martin Emerson certainly has that size. Do you like the Greg Newsome, Jamar Chase matchup? Do you like Jamar Chase on Tyler Boyd? These are all things you've got to consider here. Hailassie obviously has no experience against any of these guys that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be trotting out here this weekend. AJ Green does, but it certainly was as a reserve player. So not a ton of reps, but he has had a couple turnovers in games that he has played against the Cincinnati Bengals. So it could be a weird path for AJ Green where he could go from a guy who was cut, brought back a little bit later to the practice squad, and all of a sudden they're saying playing significant playing time week 1, being elevated from the practice squad. Kahel Hailassie, it's not been long. All we've seen is drills. Obviously, this time of year, we don't get practice footage. We know he can play on the outside. We all saw that interception he had against the New Orleans Saints in the preseason game, when he was still with the Chiefs, that he had against the Saints. Beautiful interception, high and away to his outside, was able to, maintain both feet in bounds. But for the Browns right now, it's, this is a big issue. You put so much work in to revamp this defensive line. And yes, this defensive line, even before all these new names were brought in, even before Jim Schwartz was brought in, it always seemed that the Bengals defensive line, some of their best efforts were always against the Cincinnati Bengals. But in playing this out here, and there is no definitive word on Joe Burrow, and I certainly don't blame Zach Taylor, Cincinnati Bengals head coach, for saying, "Oh well, he should be fine to go." Does everybody believe Joe Burrow's playing Sunday? 100%. Does that mean Zach Taylor has to tell everybody that Joe Burrow is playing this early in the week on Sunday? No, That doesn't, try to keep them thinking, of course. So with that, you play with the assumption of, Joe Burrow. And look, Tyler Boyd has been a guy that's been a thorn in the Browns' side his entire time here in the NFL. T. Higgins is just a difficult matchup for this team. Again, Martin Emerson is the only one that has the size to truly match up with him. Physicality, Higgins has longer arms. He's able to create separation. He's able to get guys off of him. He's able to high point. So you think that T. Higgins, Martin Emerson, matchup, you just take the 8 basically, and wherever he goes, he's going to go. 23 is going to go on 5. By the way, T. Higgins changed to jersey number 5, if anybody wasn't aware. But it does give you the idea of what are we doing about Jamar Chase, who, probably, right neck and neck with Justin Jefferson is one of the most explosive wide receivers in the entire NFL. Are you going to say, Emerson versus Higgins, and then we're going to figure out who is going to go with Jamar Chase, of course, with help, because, there aren't very many people who can cover Jamar Chase alone in this league. The Browns do have one of them, but the whole scenario we're talking about here is the possibility of the unavailability of Denzel Ward come Sunday for the opener. So there's a lot to look at here, as far as what could possibly happen Sunday if Denzel, unfortunately, is unable to play in this one. But you paid Jim Schwartz a lot of money. You brought Jim Schwartz here because you have a lot of faith in the defensive mind of what he can do. And for Jim Schwartz, a lot of his beliefs of what has been the success rate for the Browns against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, it is getting after the quarterback. If he doesn't throw it because he is being harassed, obviously you don't have to worry about how the coverage is or who's covering who. The point is to get the quarterback to the ground, knock balls down as much as possible, just create a living, nightmare for Joe Burrow. Of course, he is one of the most established quarterbacks in the league. He's one of the most intelligent quarterbacks in the league. He's one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks in the league. Even though he has not done much this summer, he's amped it up here over the last week and a half. He is practicing, from what I gather from people I've spoken to with the Bengals, pretty much at full pace. So it's going to be, either way, it was going to be a handful Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, it's Joe Mixon, it's T. Higgins, it's Tyler Boyd. And don't sleep on their new tight end, Irv Smith. Irv Smith may not be a solid blocker, but Irv Smith could be a problem as far as a pass catcher for the Browns come Sunday. He's a little bit more mobile. He's a little bit more athletic than any tight end that they've had in Cincinnati over the last few years. Certainly the most athletic tight end that Joe Burrow's had the ability to work with since he's been with the Cincinnati Bengals. So all things to ponder, all things to watch here as, we're going to wait, and see where we're at with Denzel Ward. My assumption is we're not going to hear any more until Wednesday when the Browns take to the practice field on Wednesday. But replacing a player like Denzel Ward, even if it could be a short stretch, isn't the easiest thing to do. That's with factoring how deep the Cleveland Browns cornerback room is. So we'll monitor that over the next couple days. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns as we continue here. Appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen. Make sure you join the everyday crowd by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube page. It is time. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Guys, it's probably worth it for that alone. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes us your first listen. I appreciate everybody who's joined the everyday crowd. Let's keep that number going. Over 6,600 now. I know it's a far stretch, but what do you say? Maybe 7K by Sunday? So we've gotten to, Denzel Ward still in the concussion protocol. Dustin Hopkins not at practice today. Will show up to do workout tomorrow, even though the Cleveland Browns are off. No reason was given, but, given, the moving from the West Coast to Ohio, you never know. There could have been some loose ends, certainly on Dustin Hopkins' part to have to tie up, so to speak. I'm going to talk here a little bit. And, with the episode we did yesterday with Pete, and I always love having Pete on. Pete and I have fantastic football conversations, some of the greatest football conversations we have, never make it to podcasts, sadly. But want to talk a little bit about attacking this Bengals defense. And And a lot of Bengals fans jumped in the comments. And look, facts are facts, okay? Awuzie, who has been the Bengals' best cornerback the last 2 years, he tore his ACL on Halloween against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. He has been cleared medically to go, but facts are facts. He hasn't been on the field since November. And yes, some of the best football he's ever played has been with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was not great before that. How do I attack a team like this? And then I factor into the fact that the Bengals have 2 brand new starters at safety in Dax Hill and in newcomer Nick Scott. I am attacking. I am throwing the ball vertically. I am trying to do anything I can. Awuzie is getting his first legitimate reps, and they're going to come against players like Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, possibly Marquise Goodwin, possibly Cedric Tillman. These are good, solid wide receivers, and I'm going to go at Awuzie all day, and I'm going to go at him vertically. And you know what else I'm going to do? One rep, he's going to see Amari Cooper. The next rep, he's going to see Donovan Peoples-Jones. The next rep, he's going to see Elijah Moore. I'm going to throw all my different wide receivers and all the different skill sets that they have at him like a baseball lineup. And he'll either come back really, really quick, which not usually is the case with an ACL, or he's going to be on skates all day long Sunday. And I am going to attack the living daylights out of Awuzie. The kid on the other side, Cam Taylor-Britt, really, really stepped up in the absence of Awuzie last year. Really, really improved his game, had a hell of a run during the playoffs, and really put a name on himself. There are a lot of people that are, that they're breakout players. A lot of people have Cam Taylor-Britt as a breakout player in the 2023 season. And I'd say rightfully so after what he did to close out the season last year and essentially playing as the Bengals' #1 quarterback. But Dax Hill, played some nickel last year, played a little safety every now and then. But this is a team that lost Jesse Bates, and this is a team that lost Von Bell. 2 guys that were solid professionals. Bates a star, Bell just a lunch pail player that showed up every day and did his job and did it well. I am going after this. These guys are Hill, Scott, they're responsible for David Njoku. They're responsible for Akers. Then you factor in Donovan Peoples-Jones had over 200 yards in the 2 games against Cincinnati Bengals last year. Both games. First one was 4 for 81. I think second one was 7 for like $117. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 8 well against the Cincinnati Bengals team last year. So you figure Donovan should have a nice one. Another one is, everybody talks that the Browns going to make this transition now with Deshaun Watson at quarterback and running a lot more gun and maybe starting to institute maybe more of an inside zone. As we've been comfortable, the Browns have, as we've become comfortable with, the Browns have been a highly productive outside zone team over the last few years. But the Bengals team, and unlike a lot of teams in the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals prioritize linebackers. They have really, really good linebackers. Pratt, Wilson, they have some solid linebackers. So the inside zone, this might not be the week where we see maybe that transformation for the Cleveland Browns, where they're going to start shifting more. I'm sure they're going to run some, and it's going to be interesting because we've only gotten to see Nick Chubb do it a little bit last year. The Browns in the preseason games were running more inside zone. And we saw players like John Kelly, and we saw, of course, Demetric Felton, who we will see on Sunday, whether or not he dresses, but obviously part of the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw these guys run a lot of inside zone over the summer here. But I think the inside zone might be something that's going to wait, for later weeks here, because, you're going against one of the most dominant run defenders in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals in DJ Reader. He is just a fantastic player. Hate that he's a Bengal. Would love to have him with Cleveland. And you saw the difference. He did not play in the first game last year when the Browns beat up on the Bengals on Halloween. He did play in the second game, which the Bengals beat the Browns, and you saw the difference. Nick Chubb had a really, really difficult day that week. DJ Reader, he can cut through. He can split double teams. He is strong as an ox. He can take on blockers. He can fight off blockers. He's a really, really big asset in what the Cincinnati Bengals do to stop the run. So, this is just some thoughts here. And look, the Bengals are dealing with some issues. The Browns could be dealing without Denzel Ward, but the Bengals are dealing with what they believe is their #1 cornerback, who hasn't taken a live rep since Halloween after tearing his ACL, of course, at Cleveland Browns Stadium in that Monday night matchup. I'm going all after him. I am. I got to prove that he's healthy. I got to prove that he's ready. I got to prove that he is ready to face this new, revamped, and highly skilled in diverse ways that is the Browns wide receiver room. Amari Cooper, just a solid route runner, solid pro. Donovan Peoples-Jones got the Jets and obviously can high point. Elijah Moore is basically a blast in the glass. You don't know what you're going to get from him at any given time. Marquise Goodwin, full throttle, 4'2" guy. And of course, Cedric Tillman, the big kid, obviously, a lot bigger than any of the corners the Bengals have. Another guy with the ability to high point the ball. And then, David Bell, obviously, is a guy who can contribute in slot as well. He had 2 for 27 in that Monday night game on Halloween last year against the Bengals. So certainly a player. There are weapons for Deshaun Watson. And as we talked about yesterday with Pete, and we used to talk about during the Baker years, the most important receiver on any given play is the open one, because there's always one. Find him, get him the ball, and let them get up the ball get up the field with the ball in their hands. So, Denzel Ward still in the protocol. Some number changes. PJ Walker's first appearance with the Browns today at practice. Dustin Hopkins will be back in town on Tuesday. Browns back to the practice field on Wednesday. Hope to hear more on Denzel Ward then. And, what is plan B if Denzel doesn't go? We got to that. And how I'm attacking the Cincinnati Bengals defense if I am Kevin Stefanski and company come Sunday in the opener at Cleveland Browns Stadium. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns, now officially your 7th season covering the Browns here for Locked On. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd, keeps growing. Let's get those numbers up. Get me as close to 70K as possible as we can before Sunday. I appreciate you all so much. Of course, Locked On Browns is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.